Hello and welcome. So today's topic is our right ventricle, as you can see in this photo. This is the entry view and this is the posterior view. Okay. Now you guys already know that the basic things about this right ventricle, that 2/3 part of this right ventricle anteriorly it forms the anterior surface or the sternocostal surface. It is also contributes to form the inferior border. It is also contributes to form the 1/3 part of the inferior surface or the diaphragmatic surface. Okay. Now if you cut this right ventricle in horizontal section or cross section and you see this above, you will see this is the almost semilunar shaped right ventricle. Okay. Now in this right ventricle, the most important part is the interior or the inside. It comes always in exam and asked in practical, also comes in MCQ based exams. Okay. Now you have to understand how the heart works, basic things. See, suppose this is the right ventricle. Just imagine this is the right ventricle. Okay. Now from the entire body, various types of veins drains the blood into the right atrium. Okay. Now from the right atrium, all this blood enters into the right ventricle through the atrioventricular foramen. Our heart has two atrioventricular foramen, one in the left side, one in the right side. Now I am talking about right ventricle, so common sense, I am talking about the right atrioventricular foramen, which is guarded by tricuspid valve. I will talk about it shortly, just wait. Now when this blood enters into the right ventricle, now these valves are closed. Okay. So when this ventricle during contraction or it contracts, all this blood has no way to go in the right atrium because the valves are closed. So where does this blood goes? See, from the upper part of the right ventricle, there is a big vessel originates. This vessel is known as pulmonary trunk. Okay, it is guarded by pulmonary valves, just like the tricuspid valve. Now, main thing, when the heart or the right ventricle contracts, okay, or squeezes, all this blood of this right ventricle enters into the pulmonary trunk. Okay, gone. This is the basic mechanism. Now you have to understand that inside of this right ventricle, two things is happening. Inflow. Inflow means from the right atrium, bloods are coming inside of the right ventricle. Inflow. Another point is outflow. From the right ventricle, bloods are going outside in the pulmonary trunk. So you are getting inflow, outflow. That's why we divide this right ventricle into two parts, inflow part, outflow part. Okay. Now this inflow part is rough. Why? I will talk about it later. Inflow part is rough, so we call it rough part. Outflow part is smooth. Why? I will talk about it later. So it is also known as smooth part. Now inflow part is also known as ventricle proper. Now the outflow part is also known as infundibulum. Why? I will talk about it later. Okay, I'll talk about it one by one details. Now this part is also known as conus arteriosus. Okay, there is a supraventricular crest. I mean there is a crest which divides the outflow part and inflow part. So supraventricular crest acts as a divider, as you can see in this photo. Now one by one. First of all, right atrioventricular foramen, as you can see in this photo from the above. Okay. Now in the foramen, it is guarded by three valves, tricuspid. Okay. So this tricuspid valve has two components. One is tricuspid annulus, another is tricuspid or its cusp or leaflets. Okay. Now what is annulus? Annulus is actually ring-like structure, almost oval shaped. It acts as a base of these valves. Okay, suppose this is the annulus. Okay, and the inside part acts as a base, and from this base you are getting these leaf-like projections. Okay, angular projections, we call these leaflets or cusp. Okay, this tricuspid valve has tri means three cusp. Okay, these are anterior, posterior, septal. Okay, now one thing try to understand. Suppose this is the boundary and this is the base of the cusp. So if it is attached like this and you are getting inferiorly downward a projection or indentation, deep indentation. This indentation area in between the tricuspid annulus, the base, and the tricuspid valve or the base of the valve, this indentation is known as commissure. So this commissure you get find in between this cusp and the base. So you are getting antero-posterior commissure, antero-septal commissure, and posterior-septal commissure. As I said, inflow part, because the blood are coming inside, that's why it is known as inflow. Now I also said it is a rough. Why? Because you are getting papillary muscles. Okay, these are modified cardiac muscles, so we call it papillary muscles. And these papillary muscles getting outside and gives a localized network branches. We call this trabeculae carni. Due to the presence of trabeculae carni, the inside part of this right ventricle is rough. That's why we call it rough part. Okay, and this is inside the ventricle, so we call it ventricle proper. Now you understand why did I say these names? Now in the outflow part, I told you because these bloods are getting out from this right ventricle into the pulmonary trunk, so you call it outflow part. And this outflow part contains no papillary muscle, no trabeculae carni, so it is smooth like butter. Okay, so we call it smooth part. The pulmonary trunk originates from this side, so the base part is known as infundibulum. So you are getting infundibulum only and only in the right ventricle. You will never find this infundibulum in right atrium, left ventricle. Okay, only in right ventricle. This base of this pulmonary trunk gives a conical appearance. Okay, so due to this presence of conical structure, we also call it conus arteriosus. Now next important component of the right ventricles are ridges, bridges, pillars. Okay, what are these things? Now one by one. First of all, pillars. Pillars means what? This gives a support. Now you are getting three pillars, which are actually the papillary muscles. We are having three papillary muscles in the right ventricle: anterior, posterior, septal. Okay, anterior means it arises from the anterior ventricular wall, posterior means posterior ventricular wall, and the septal wall which is facing in the right ventricle. Okay, now from the each papillary muscles at the apex part or from the tip part of these muscles, it gives a white color projections, looks like a tendon or cord. Okay, because it has cord like structure and strength like tendon. That's why these white color projections are known as chordae tendini. Okay, as you can see in this photo. Now this chordae tendini goes upside and attaches the inferior part of the cusp, the tricuspid valves, the cusps of the tricuspid valve. Okay, now I told you that this tricuspid valve, base of this cusp and the tricuspid annulus, you are getting the deep indentation or the commissures. This chordae tendini attaches with this commissure. Okay, now you understand why these commissures are important. As you can see in this photo, you are seeing the anterior papillary muscle and the interventricular septum. Okay, now from the interventricular septum to the anterior papillary muscle, one bridge is forming. Okay, a septomarginal trabecula acts as a bridge. Now this bridge conveys right branch of the AV bundle. Now what is the right branch, what are the left branch, what is AV bundle? I will talk about this in details in later. And now the last component, which is ridge. What is ridge? I told you a few minutes ago that supraventricular crest, as you can see in this photo. This supraventricular crest acts as a ridge. Why? Because it separates the outflow part and the inflow part of the right ventricle. Okay, now I hope you a little bit understand, and see you soon with our left ventricle. Till then, bye.